What is wellness?
I think of the image of wellness as like pure joy.
The important thing is for people to choose, like, what do you want to do?
Wellness are the things your grandmother told you to do.
When you really start to think about it, the answer feels more complicated. I'm Maya Feller, registered dietitian nutritionist and author.
And I'm Dr. Kavita Patel. We're the hosts of Well Now, Slate's new podcast on wellness.
Join us every Wednesday as we tackle that simple yet important question, what does it mean to be well?
Hello, well-adjusting listeners. I want to take a minute to introduce you to a new show that I have been completely getting into lately called Mina AF. It is hosted by Mina Starsiak Hawk, who you may know as the host of HGTV's Good Bones. Oh my God, I love that show. Anyway, as you all know from listening to Well Adjusting, we really love getting into the nitty-gritty of things that people are grappling with in their lives. And if you love that about our show, I am telling you, you're going to love Mina's show too. Now, Mina is not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions, and she does not shy away from talking about the things that we can sometimes be embarrassed to, feel or think. I'm talking about getting plastic surgery to managing grief and everything in between. You are going to hear from guests, including Ashley Flowers of Crime Junkies, health coach Erica Fitlove, Mina's husband, Stephen Hawk, and from listeners like you who can send in your questions to be answered by Mina on the show. Now, in the episode that you are about to hear, Mina chats with Ashley Flowers, who she refers to as the Michael Jordan of podcasting, the GOAT. Okay, yeah, no, I should not have done that. We all know it. Let's just move on. Anyway, they talk about balancing motherhood and work, and it is such an incredible conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, while you're at it, why don't you listen to Mina AF wherever you get your pods? Follow it, rate it, and review it. But also make sure you do that for Well Adjusting. I'm just saying, everybody. Okay, great. Thanks. Good day.
I'm Mina Starsiak Hawk, and this is Mina AF, where I answer all of your questions and you can ask me anything.
Can we talk about money?
Can you still breastfeed with implants?
You're both boss moms, and I'd love to know the story of how you met.
Literally anything any of you want to hear. Listen as we build a community and get to know each other better. You guys, I am super excited, so excited today for our guest. Also completely terrified because not only is she incredibly beautiful and incredibly smart, she is, I believe, been coined the queen of crime podcast. I think you're probably just the queen of podcasting, but we have the amazing and talented Ashley Flowers.
Hello.
I'm so excited and I'm stress sweating. I was telling Steve last night, I was like, okay, I'm actually recording with Ashley tomorrow and I'm super nervous. He's like, why are you nervous? You guys are friends. And I was like, well,
I think that's strange too, because and this is the one that an interview that I'm actually the most comfortable with, because I'm like, oh, I can Mina's cool, I can trust her. There's not gonna be any wild things. I have press PTSD, and I'm I'm down to just hang.
He was like, it's fine. I was like, no, she's she literally is Michael Jordan of podcasting. That is the thing. And I was like, if we were building houses, sure, but it's we're not. We're podcasting.
To be fair, I think there isn't a single podcaster out there who listens to their first episodes and are like, yeah, I nailed it.
That was amazing.
Yeah, I
nailed it.
I literally, since I've recorded our first episodes, have never gone back because I think I would cry. I would want to claw my eyes out. I would want to hide under the table. So that is your episodes are going to be great, but you are still going to hate them no matter what.
Well, I bought Steve the fan club membership, which he didn't need because he's up to date and he's already seen everything. I bought it 2 Christmases ago, but I've been using it. And I listen to you when I work out in the morning and when I get my massage.
Yeah.
Which is not weird at all. But I went all the way back to the beginning, and that's where I started.
Oh,
so
God.
I have been listening to all these episodes that are old where you're swearing you're never going to have children, and you're probably, 5 years old. And they're amazing.
I always tell people the old episodes, what I love is with ads or with podcasting, the ads are dynamic. So like current ads go in old episodes. And so I'm always waiting for the person who gets the ad where I'm like, F kids, I'm never having kids. And I cut to a Pampers ad.
Exactly.
And they're like, wait,
exactly.
what happened?
Yes. And we are definitely going to talk about the momness that you are now. But let's kick off with a question from the mailbox. This first one is from Amy.
Hey there. Thank you for allowing us to ask questions. So I'm very excited to see the two of you ladies together because you're both two very badass, self-made boss moms. And I'd love to know the story of how you met.
Our meet cute story, Steve is going to be so mad that he's not here because he doesn't think I tell it right and he doesn't like the way that you tell it or I tell it. But the short story is that he catfished you.
1,000%.
Yes. So on your end, I think in all fairness, Steve is a huge Crime Junkie fan, as are all sane humans. And he's like telling me about it. And he's like, she's in Indy, Mina. Like, how is this not a thing? Like, you've got to figure this out. You've got to meet her. We need to be friends with them. And Steve also says that to me about David Beckham. So, there's only so much I can do. But he was not wrong. It was strange that we hadn't crossed paths yet.
Yeah.
So I sent you the first message on Instagram. And I think both of our better halves are better at that kind of communication than we are.
Oh, 100%. I am terrible at follow-up. And so I'll be like, yes. Yeah, for sure. I'll reply. And then life gets busy. Also, my DMs are a black hole. And it's like a miracle I saw yours to begin with.
It is. I got the check mark, which is helpful.
Yeah. Well, what's also important to note, though, is I think at the time you guys were reaching out, COVID happened. So that delayed any getting it together.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. So that's where things I think kind of dropped off for a while is because the world shut down. And then we eventually did get together for a double date. We double date at Geraldine's in Indy, our favorite date spot.
It was so good. But Steve was not happy with my follow-up. So I had sent the message. I think you had responded maybe. Oh, God, I wonder if I even still have those. But Steve took over my Instagram account and continued this conversation
as you.
As me.
Yeah, he didn't say it was him for sure.
No, as he would have wanted me to be following up in a more appropriate manner.
Yeah.
And I believe I kind of I think I knew he was because I was like, yeah, no, I'm a hot mess. Do whatever you need to do. Figure out a dinner date. So he catfished you thinking that you were chatting with me. Hell, maybe he was chatting with Eric. Who knows?
Well, and I'm shocked. Eric was so down to meet. It is so hard to make new friends as an adult. And
Dating as an adult?
I remember us being so nervous. We're we haven't, we're going on a double date with someone we've never met. This could be totally weird. Also, for some reason, I wasn't, super familiar with your personal life. I remember telling you I thought that you were, really religious and had, 7 kids, which I was again, this is pre-Joe. I was I just don't know that her and I have a lot in common, but, let's go get dinner.
I would not have accepted the date if I thought that I was who you thought I was.
But yeah, so we were really nervous going in just because we were we don't know anything. What if we have nothing to talk about? But I was shocked. My husband usually steers clear of this kind of stuff, and he was all in.
Oh my gosh, Steve's the same way. And I was stress sweating.
Oh, we were instant best friends though. Dinner was amazing. We went back to your house afterwards. If it truly was a first date, we closed the deal.
Oh yeah, I mean we definitely there would have been sexy time if it was an actual date. But I think Frank got all the sexy time because we had an amazing dinner. Probably, I think probably had 2 Manhattans before you guys even got there because I was so nervous. And Geraldine's is amazing, but the upstairs is not as...
The vibe is not the same.
It's the vibe's not the same. And we were the only table up there. So it's just us under a microscope. Anywho, it went out well. We went back to the house. And then if Steve and I hadn't sealed the deal, Frank sealed it 100%.
Yeah, because Frank, your 300-pound dog, was just sitting on my husband's lap the entire night.
The whole night.
Fabulous.
It was incredible. So that was kind of the beginning of what, all jokes aside, has turned into a really great friendship.
Yeah.
I mean, your friend, your group of friends, I feel like we're kind of in all the little circles together now. We do events together, and it's been really nice because it is hard to make friends as adults.
So hard. And it's so nice having somebody who's, now you're in podcasting, now we're in the same industry, but having somebody who is just in media.
Yeah. Because it's weird.
Yeah, and I don't have a lot of those friends, but it's especially weird being in media in Indiana because that just is not a thing.
No.
We're trying to make it
it's
a thing,
not.
But
And I mean, I think some of my other like female friends that I'm closest with, like Adrienne, who owns the wedding studio, like being a woman, owning a business, and now particularly like you're a mom now, it is a whole different beast. And if you're not in it, it's kind of hard to get like what we actually do all day. And like the stress is like, oh, you get to sit in a booth and record. But I think sometimes it's like you have to be on.
Yeah.
You have to be on for so many things. And that can be very draining, like emotionally and physically and mentally. So we'll get to that. But I so want to talk about your upbringing because we've joked about that, you grew up in a cult. And I want to kind of hear the big story for everyone that doesn't know. You were raised like very strict and religious.
Yeah. So we joke that it was a cult. Technically, I think they called themselves non-denominational. I don't know what that meant to them. I think it was borderline like evangelical Christian is really the closest thing I can find to compare. And it's how Britt and I know each other. And truly, there was a lot of good that came from that. I had a happy childhood, really, tight friendships. My dad worked for the church. So we actually lived in what's called a parsonage, which is a house owned by the church. It was on the church property. So literally, I lived in this bubble. And I think that's why I call it a cult, is like everyone I knew was from the church. I went to school. I was either homeschooled for a while or I went to the school at the church. We had to go to church 3 times a week. Like there was no life outside of church. I remember even when being younger, because we went to church so much and hearing about people who would like get to sleep in on Sunday. And I remember thinking that was like such a small portion of the population. Like you think you're the majority. And I just couldn't imagine a world outside. But it was really strict. Like, so I could not watch whatever, Harry Potter and weird things like Furbies were a no-go. Cabbage Patch Kids were a no-go. Like things that my mom can't even explain why now. But like,
it's like the gateway toy to all the things.
My mom is going to kill me because full disclosure, like my whole family's cool now. Like we got out of the cult.
Oh my gosh. I would never be like, oh yeah, no, you were super religious and strict.
My mom's going to kill me for telling the story because she's mortified every time I bring it up. I think I was in 5th grade and I was wearing these overalls and it was cool to like have one of the shoulders like undone.
What a hussy.
And that's what my mom thought. she was like, absolutely not. And she's like, do you know why they do that, Ashley? And I was like, And she's like, it's so they can get undressed faster to have sex.
What?
I was like, I'm pretty sure no, but also like I'm also going to church right now and then to my church school and like nothing's happening.
Yeah.
It brings it back to something I think I'm most resentful for about like how we grew up is the way young girls and women were looked at. Like when I look back at the things that were being told to us, we would go to like these summer camps and we had to wear one pieces with T-shirts over them because we couldn't distract the boys. Like the boys, there was no conversations with them about like.
Meanwhile, they're in like running around in banana hammocks and shit.
Well, yeah, and there's no conversation with them about like being appropriate or how to manage their hormones or not looking at us. It was like we just have to not distract them. And every story you read, it was always the woman who was a man's downfall. And there was a lot of shame on women and your sexuality. And I remember so many conversations around purity because they would say, once you give that away, you're not really worth anything to your husband. And again, I don't think the boys were getting much of that conversation. Maybe some.
No.
But they made everything seem like your worth was your virginity, which is just absolutely bonkers to me. And everything so much, even outside of that, I think the reason I am so far removed from that today is it wasn't about. What they preached was love and acceptance and Jesus and giving. But when you actually looked at what they were doing, it was more about judgment, us versus them. So it was really saying one thing and doing another. And it was I feel like people still making the mistakes and being human, But instead of realizing that we all do that and how do we become better people, it was about putting on a front. There was a lot of lies, a lot of secrecy. Eventually, the church fell apart, I think, because of all the secrets and the lies.
That was my question, because I don't know if we've ever really talked about like the transition out of that lifestyle, because your parents aren't in it now. You're obviously not, but what happened?
Well, yeah. So at some point, it was like a mega church. And it was started by a man who then passed away, passed it down to his sons. And eventually, I think it was around like as I was coming out of middle school and into high school.
Pretty much Righteous Gemstones.
No, truly. Like so stinking. Like it's a great show. I love watching that show, but it brings back a lot of memories.
Yeah.
Right as I was like coming into high school, the church really just kind of fell apart. Like all the brothers went their separate ways. The church, everyone kind of crumbled. They either followed one person or just found like a new church altogether. And that's kind of where our family was. We found a new church altogether. And I think, again, you get out of the bubble and you start seeing the bubble from a different view.
It's like a new normal. Like, what I thought was normal, there's a lot more that falls into that category.
Yeah, and there's a lot like, again, when you're being fed one thing by all these people again, and they have your paycheck, they own your house, like your whole dependency is on them. And so you can't see the forest through the trees. And then you get out of that and you really get some perspective, which I think allowed us to grow and to get better. And, a big part of it for me was even going to college and even getting further away from the church, my family, how I grew up, even because everyone around me still grew up the same way. And I think once you go outside and you meet different types of people who live different walks of life, and that's when I really found for myself that, like, I don't care what people believe, but like if you're not helping people, if you're not loving people for exactly who they are, if you're causing more harm than good, then you're not being a good person, and that's not what I want to associate myself with.
So your whole upbringing story is like one murder away from being one of your episodes.
I'm truly shocked that nothing more scandalous happened. I keep waiting. There was that like Hillsong documentary that just came out.
Yes,
I loved it.
Oh my
gosh,
gosh,
I keep waiting. I'm like, where's the one about my church? Because like any day now, there's got to be something.
I just listened to one, the church, and it was like the whole family that owned it, and the girl got pregnant by her cousin, and she was like 12.
Oh, Selena Mays.
Selena, yes, I just listened to
Crime
that
Junkie
episode, and like I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah, that one was wild. Yeah, she's still missing. They have no idea what happened to her, but I mean, something within that church, someone knows something.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, obviously, if the church hadn't fallen apart, you probably would be a completely different human. But when your family transitioned out of that church into the new one, what was different about it? What changed that allowed your family to kind of transform into what it is now?
I don't know that it was the new church. So because I think that because they still believed a lot of the same things, even in this new church. I just think we weren't so deep in it. Like we went on Sunday mornings and then we continued to live our lives. We were forced to meet new people. So when the church broke up, there was no school. I went to a public high school. And so our circle just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that's what's so important. When you're in this tight-knit group and you're all just kind of feeding the same information back to each other, that's truth. And that's the only truth you'll ever know. And I understand why they believe that everyone else is telling lies and that's evil and we hate that.
Because all the people you know and trust are saying X, and these other, scandalous people are saying Y, and they're having their straps undone on their overalls.
Right.
Oh, how far you have come. Oh my goodness.
Girl, I know.
To the most like amazing sequin podcasting goddess ever. Anytime I do anything with Ashley, you guys, I think to myself, what's Ashley going to wear? And then I immediately know the answer is sequins. And then I think about how I don't have enough sequins. And I have 4 items in my collection now that have sequins, literally only because I need to be able to have sequins on occasion if I am doing something with Ashley.
Well, that whole thing started, I love a sparkle. Like I just get so excited. And I used to say, before my podcasting days, before I owned my own company, that I have more sequin than anyone in Indiana should own because
100%.
I'm like, where am I going to wear this to? And it was true. It was like building up and I loved it. It made me so happy. And so finally one day, once I owned my own company, I was coming into the office that I ran and I was like, why am I waiting for a special occasion? If sequin makes me happy, like I'm going to roll in with my disco pants on. And so that's kind of like where it went. And I'm never afraid of being overdressed. I feel like as long as you're showing up confident and you like love it, who gives a fuck what you're wearing? Like,
well, and it's so funny because, a lot of people, the saying like, oh, well, they have a face for radio. I am in my little podcast bubble. I worked out. I put a hat on. I didn't shower. But you like are on point every day and it makes you so happy and I love it. And I'm like, I should really like try a little more because it does make you feel good. Like if you're put together, you feel some kind of way.
I do. Don't get me wrong. I have my scrubby days. I like to tell people I'm either a 2 or a 10. Like there's nothing in between.
There's nothing in between.
Truly. Like I will either be, it's like, oh my God, are you okay? Or it's like, oh
you
my
look
God,
really
good.
tired. I get that a lot. You look so tired. I'm like, well, don't ever say that to anyone ever again.
Yeah, so I definitely have my scrubby days. But we just got a new office. Now I've got 36 people who show up every day. And I do feel like I'm the face of this. I'm going to set the tone for what it's like to be here. And so I'm going to put a little effort in.
So yeah, we just had dinner, like a week or so ago. And we're talking about your Christmas party last year compared to your holiday this year and how much Audio Chuck has grown. And it's really super incredible because if we can like back up just a little bit, it wasn't that long ago that you were doing like hospital sales.
No, medical sales. I did medical sales and then I did software sales before this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm sure a lot of people have heard you talk about that you read Nancy Drew and you were super into crime, which I am interested. Was that allowed in the culty church or was that something that was more developed once you got out of it?
No, that again, the stuff that was or wasn't there. I swear to God, there was no rhyme or reason. It was just them like, how can we control these people? Because, I was reading Nancy Drew when I was little. I was watching Matlock with my mom when I was like 5. So that, and maybe that's why.
That's so strange.
Uh-huh. So that stuff is probably why it was some of the only stuff I was allowed to consume that wasn't Christian faith-based.
So you just went down that rabbit hole and it became like a super...
I've never thought about it that way. Maybe that's why I'm obsessed.
My podcasting room, I'm not kidding, is probably 9 by 9 and Frank's in here with me and he just farted.
Oh.
It's so bad, like rotten egg. And
Chuck does that all the time at the office. Everyone's so nice for putting up with him.
He was in the office, me and Finley share an office, and he did like the downward dog bend with his butt facing her. And she's like, I saw into his soul and it went down his butthole. Yes, we both love dogs, if you guys didn't know. And our doggies are at work with us quite often. I think Chuck probably has a much more plush life at your office than Frank does. But
have I shown you his custom-made dog bed in my office?
Is it the one that's like on the window?
Yes.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah, we made him this dog bed. It's like even with the windowsill, it has like this cushy top. I took the old sign from my office that said Audio Chuck. I kept the part that just said Chuck and put it on the bed. He's got these little stairs to climb up. He sits there in the sun looking freaking majestic. It's like the thing I'm most proud of.
We could do a whole episode about our dogs, I'm sure. So I think what is really interesting to me, because even before you got pregnant with Joe, I had listened to these episodes where you said frequently, like, would tell a tragic story and like, this is why I'm never having kids. I'm never having kids. I'm never having kids. And now you have Joe, and I'm sure you can't imagine it any other way. But that's got to be hard. Like my mom did sex crimes for a long time, and there was a lot of stuff where you saw kids getting neglected, injured, purposefully hurt. And you're like, I don't want to bring anyone into this effed up world. Was that kind of the thought process because you were so in the thick of all these like horrible things?
I mean, there was a lot of things. I mean, like the first and foremost is like, I didn't want it at the time. And I always used to say, or I would a little bit, but I used to say that I want to do everything else I want to do first. So that way, when I have a kid, it's like the last thing that I haven't done that I want more than anything. So I know that way, when it's really hard, I think it'll be easier to handle because I want it so much. So kind of wanting kids was never enough for me. And I was doing so much with my career that like Eric and I were so happy with the two of us. We would look at our friends with kids. It didn't seem, I wasn't going to have kids just because that's what other people did. And so for a long time, that didn't seem like it. Also, there was this part of like what I do. Not that the world is such a bad place. That's a little bit of it. It's fucking terrifying. But it's like I feel now that I have her, which is what I was afraid would happen, that I have this huge, gaping, vulnerable spot that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
That, I could worry about myself if something happened to me, like I'm an adult, I can, whatever. But now I just have this crawling, talking vulnerability that's going to walk out into the world that I can't protect 24/7. And it is so stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's, and you get to keep her at home most of the time. Like once they get into school, I'm like, you say something mean to my kid, I will cut you.
I think about this stuff all the time. I've got like such anxiety about life, but I think I was stuck behind a school bus coming out of my neighborhood. This was literally this week. And I remember seeing this little tiny girl with her big old backpack, like getting on the bus. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't think I will. I have to, right? But I don't think I could ever like just send my baby into the world and just trust other people to take care of her.
Oh, absolutely not.
I don't want to do
not.
that. Well, there's no right or wrong, right? You have to figure it out for yourself. I think that's so much of parenting because I'm also afraid of going the other direction where I don't want to be this helicopter parent that like,
oh God, no.
Because the more you try to control them, the more they want to like act out and then they do something stupid. So I'm just petrified. I want her to stay 9 months forever so I can just like keep her with me. And I know that's not going to happen.
No, Kelsey, my sister, is 8 years younger than me, so a pretty decent sized gap. And when she went away to college, it was after there'd been, a handful of murders, disappearances at IU. And when she went, I did my best to instill like the fear of God in her. I was like, you look like a Barbie doll. People will steal you. They will traffic you. They will like, do not let your guard down for a second. I am not Liam Neeson. I will not be able to find you. You need to be careful. Those are the exact words. And I remember like one of the scariest nights, because I was kind of like her mom. Because my mom she was like, I raised my kids. I'm good. Like her phone didn't stay on at night. Mine's always on. So Kelsey would call me a lot of times just drunk. But I got a call from her and I couldn't understand her. She was crying hard. I couldn't understand what she was saying. And she sounded like someone had died. And then I finally make out he made out with another girl at the bar.
Also tragic.
And I'm like, okay. Are you safe? Are you safe? She's walking home. Her house was probably a 15-minute walk from the bars. And this was at 2 a.m. And she's calling me because this guy she liked was making out with another girl. So she left and is walking home from the bars, which is one of the rules I said. You never go anywhere by yourself. If you go with people, you leave with people. Don't go anywhere by yourself. She's walking home. So I said, I'm staying on the phone with you. Do not hang up on me. Stay on. And so she's still crying and talking about this boy. And she's like, okay, I got to my house. I'm like, don't hang up. She's futzing with the door. I said, do not hang up. Set the phone down so you have 2 hands, get the door open, go inside, lock it, and then talk to me. And so she sets the phone down, futzing, silence.
Oh.
And I was like, and I'm calling her back. It's going straight to voicemail, I'm calling. I only knew one of her roommate's phone numbers, and I'm calling her. She's not answering. And I'm like, oh my God, what would Ashley Flowers say? This is probably before the podcast, but that's what I would say now. And I'm freaking out because, you never think something bad's going to happen. So I'm like, she's probably fine. Her phone probably just died. But what if she was snatched and murdered and I didn't call the cops? So I call the cops. They're like, well, whatever. I either called Bloomington Police or IU, and they said I had to call the other one. So I'm calling and I'm trying to explain to them where her house is because I didn't know the address, but I could see it and explain to them how to get there. And so they're at one house and no one's answering. The lights are off. I'm like, I don't think that's it. Try going a little further south. They find her house. This bitch. I think her phone had died just at the most terrifying time. But so the cops go and they go in and it's 7 girls that live in this house. They're all just schmammered, passed out. One of them, like while the cops are trying to shake them to figure out which tiny blonde is my sister and make sure she's alive, falls out of bed, like cuts her head open. And they couldn't get Kelsey to wake up, but they locate her. A roommate says, this is Kelsey. And I'm like, okay, thank you guys so much for checking and making sure she's alive. I promise you this will be a conversation tomorrow. And I mean, I was like, Kelsey, come on.
You're
smart.
I mean, what's so frustrating is I did all that dumb stuff too.
Me too.
And because you think you're invincible.
You think you're invincible.
And now being on the other end of it, yes, I'm a parent, but like I feel like I got parenty before this because of the podcast and everything.
Yes.
You just want to shake people. And I don't know why I couldn't understand it because it's not like I was new to crime. I don't know why I thought I was immune to it. I don't know why everyone thinks they're immune to it. But it makes me lose my mind.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how to get it through to people that you're so vulnerable.
Well, and I think particularly people like who are very successful or, amazing entrepreneurs, like you, for example, you have to have a certain sense of self where you're like, I can do this. Like I am invincible to be able to do all these amazing, successful things, but also balancing it with, I could be murdered tomorrow or whatever your vulnerability is and how that plays out in your life. Because if you're, if I was scared of everything all the time, then we're not going to take these chances. Maybe Audio Chuck doesn't exist or Two Chicks and a Hammer doesn't. But at the same time, I'm not trying to get killed. It's this weird balance. And I think what that it changed. I think it changed for you, like you said, when you were more in the know of all these terrible things that were going on. A lot of your episodes are in Indiana, where we live, or, in the Midwest, in towns where the people would say, we never thought this was going to happen here. But for me specifically, it changed, I think, after having kids even more, which I'm sure it did more for you because now, like you said, you are responsible for this other life.
Yeah. Again, there's this huge vulnerability that though I do have control over it, I feel such a lack of control.
Yeah.
Because there is only so much you can do as your kids get older. And if you do your job right, they go out into the world and they don't need you. But I just want to hover over her forever.
Yeah. I hope it's more socially acceptable by the time our children go off to college to have like a tracking chip in them.
Ideally.
I really hope that.
Ideally.
I would put one in me today. Track me. If I get stolen, I want you to be able to come find me.
Same.
And what I would always tell Kelsey, I said, if someone takes you, do the best you can to retain your phone and hide it so they don't take it. Because once we know you're gone, then we can at least, I was very specific about my directions for survival in college.
Oh, yeah. I'm even now, we went on this reporting trip literally last week and we were knocking on suspects' doors. And I'm like, okay, so I've got my cell phone, but I'm going to hide my Apple Watch underneath my thing. So if something happens and they were to take my phone, I at least have my Apple Watch that I can call. I
so
was going
messed
down
up.
It is messed up, but this is the life I live.
That's hilarious. So I want to talk about, because I imagine you are probably starting to get more of the question, but my oldest is 4 and people ask all the time how I balance motherhood and work. And it ticks Steve off to no end because he's like, oh, yeah, what am I, just a bump on a log over here? No one asks dads that. So obviously that bigger conversation about motherhood and how different it looks for everyone and kind of how you've experienced that and the social element of that, what people think. I know I get all these keyboard warriors that are like, oh, you don't cook dinner for your family every night? And I'm like, heck no, I don't. I'm doing other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is balanced a little bit. I don't know how I do it because I get a lot of the great fan feedback. Well, it's also because we've got fan engagement specialists. So we have a whole team that literally makes sure people's DMs get replied to, that their emails get replied to. And the good stuff, I do get to see all of it. Our team funnels it to me. But what they have helped me to do is funnel out the shit because everyone's got an opinion about what I'm doing. And to be very honest, I don't care. What I care about is people who want to help me learn and grow as a person. Again, listening to our old episodes, there's language that we've changed. And that stuff I'm all about. Help me do better because I have such a big platform. The best example I can think of is when I had Joe. After I think it was 2 or 3 weeks, I needed to go to the office. not because I needed to do work, but because I was having such a hard time being a new mom. I had postpartum depression. I wasn't bonding with her right away. I felt like something was wrong with me. And so day in and day out, not only do I have this crazy hormone thing going on, I don't look like myself still. I've got this new baby. I've never been a parent before. I feel like I'm failing Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And so 3 weeks in, I was like,
let me do something
I'm good at. Yeah, like I want to go back to feeling like I know what I'm doing and feeling valuable, and give me 4 hours and then I'll come home, I'll be refreshed. I remember getting this DM and it was like, I never respond to shit, but it was the one that I had to because I was
You're like,
so
you son of a bitch. You're getting
so
it.
fucking mad. I think this person was saying like, you're setting a bad example for other moms who thinks that they have to be rushed back to work. And I'm like, I'm not telling people to get back to work at 8 weeks. What I'm saying is this is what I'm doing because this is what I needed. And if I would have stayed at home every day, I would have had nothing to give to Joe. I would have been sad. I would have been even more depressed. And I can't raise a happy baby if I'm miserable. Yeah. So there is a lot of that. And it is, I think, harder as a woman to go back to work because I told Eric, I was like, he's a fantastic partner. But I told him, even if we share everything 50-50, even if you do half the diapers, half the bottles, half the everything, it will never be even because the night that we got to go away for Eric's birthday, he got to sleep through the night for the first time. I still had to get up and pump.
Yeah.
My body is still physically healing. I'm doing all the stuff he's doing while I just pushed out a baby and like my cooch is sewn up and I'm like bleeding and like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm just like, so it's not like it is harder. So part of me understands a little bit why there's this question, at least early on, about going back to work and is it hard? Maybe they mean something shitty by it, but it is. We do way more of the work. I put it in perspective like this and people are like, oh, you had a kid. I'm like, it's like if we like knitted a blanket. Like, yeah, Eric went to the store and picked out the yarn with me, but like I knitted the fucking blanket. So there is that piece where I think it's harder. But like, yeah, once they're older, like right now, talking about like a work-life balance seems to only be about me, but I'm like, yo, I got Eric too. Eric comes into the office the same as I do. Why is that different? And I think it's just these traditional gender roles. But Eric actually, for the first 6 months, stayed home with her. Yeah. And I bless him for it. It ended up driving him crazy. He had to go back to work.
Well, I think that's an amazing thing if you have the opportunity to do, even if it's, if you have, again, the whole idea of leave for moms versus dads is wild and we don't need to jump into that. But even if you could do it for 2 weeks, I think it is this huge appreciation for not only the moms, but even like we both have nannies and their jobs are incredible and they spend more time with the kids during the day, obviously, than I do. And I think, there are a lot of feelings about that, like someone else is raising my children, but I know myself. And if I were to stay home with them every day, it would not be good. I would be a shell of myself and I would have nothing to give to
That's what I'm saying. And I look at my mom who thrived as a stay-at-home mom. And truly hardest fucking job in the world. But she loved it. Yeah. And it comes so easily to her. And so being home brought her so much joy. She felt so fulfilled. But to your point, I'm the same way. I knew that if I had to stay home with her, that it would feel like I had to, right? Not that I got to. And it would be the same way. You can't give from an empty cup is what they say. I need to fill my own cup before I can do it for her. And so that way I can be a bomb-ass mom, morning, evenings, weekends, holidays, trips. I can give her so much attention and be so excited and invest in her so fully because I'm investing in myself as well.
Yeah, there's just... even in my relationship with Steve, we've had conversations about, I think, kind of this general expectation about wanting, like, okay, you should want to be at home all the time with us, with the kids, with dad. I get a lot of joy from work. And I think because he was raised so differently, his mom, had dinner on the table every night at 6 and was very like the typical traditional family, whereas mine was very different. My parents divorced when I was 3. I had nannies. And I don't know if my parents ever took me to school. And so I'm just used to something different. But so even for him, it's a challenge when I own my own company. And so in his mind, okay, you could be home at 4 or 4:30 or 5. Like, why do you come home at 5:15? And so we've had the conversation about, like, you have your things, I have my things, and I need you not to project that on me, because the time I have with the kids, I cherish and I love, and I feel like it's quality. I get 25 minutes with Jack on the way to school every morning, and it is the most amazing 25 minutes of my day. And it's a great way to start it. And, you know, if I stayed home, we could have that same conversation for 8 hours and it would bring even less joy because we'd have it for 8 hours. But, you know, so it's this, even that internal, I guess judgment seems kind of harsh, but dialogue in our own relationship about how I should feel or want to feel, or I should be expected to interact as a mom. And because things are changing, but not quickly enough, it is just all these very traditional norms where mom stays at home, dad goes to work. And, you know, you guys obviously have a non-traditional setup. Like, you both work full time. Steve and I both work full time, and it works for us. And I think a lot of the people who do have those comments and judgments are just because they don't know anything different. And it's so easy for people to make those judgments behind a keyboard. Whereas if they were to meet you in person or meet me in person, it would be a completely different conversation.
No one would say any of this shit to our face.
No, because it's like we're not humans when they're not in person. I get so many inappropriate, like, sexual comments. And again, I most of them I don't respond to. But what this one guy added, he was like, "I'm so sorry. This is so embarrassing. I would never say this to your face." And I responded and I said, just a suggestion for you to roll around in your brain. Maybe interact with people on this social platform like you were talking to their face.
Because you are.
And I think that will make you feel better about how you are as a human.
Ugh.
It's just bizarre.
Yeah.
It's like, we're like not real people, kind of, I think. But I also kind of get it, because Steve's like, before we were friends with you, he's like, Ashley Flowers, and she's on this pedestal, and she's perfect and amazing and has a great podcast. And then when you know more, it humanizes people. And, you know, we all have these flaws, but why can't we just kind of like give that grace from the beginning?
Well, we're circling back a little to one of the big issues I had with the religious way I grew up. And I think the way I kind of distilled it as an adult is I felt like there was a lot of judgment for stuff that people didn't know. And what I came to find is truly these organizations are filled with a lot of good people, because I would see, you know, as I grew up and the church split up and everyone's world expanded, I would see people come in contact with someone who before they would cast a lot of judgment on, whether they were homosexual, whether they were this, that, whatever, where normally, again, it'd be like, you're going to hell, this is wrong, you have to change. And what I found is that if they actually knew the person, there was so much understanding and love that did eventually grow. So many people that I grew up with have changed their views on so many things because they personally experienced it through someone that they care about. And
yes,
I think that's what's wrong with the world. And if we can all break this one thing, I think the world becomes a better place, is that I wish people didn't have to experience or understand something to show compassion for something.
Compassion or empathy.
Yeah. It's just, to me, like, I don't know why it seems like a wild concept to people, but I always feel like I kind of live my life where, like, I don't need to understand why. I don't need to know somebody who experienced that. Like, again, if what you're doing, like, it brings you joy, happiness, you aren't hurting anyone in the world, like, and you're being a good person, great. You're great in my book.
Yeah.
Like, and I support you in your life, and I have your back. But it's how people perceive on social media, right? Like, again, if they got to know us face to face, if they lived in our world, if they were in the same situation that we were in, then they would understand it and show more compassion. But it's really easy to not put yourself in someone else's shoes. Or again, you don't have to be in my shoes. Just don't be a dick.
Yeah, no, it really is that simple. And I think part of the root of the issue is just like the human condition is we're all very like egocentric. Some people more than others, but it's hard for you to see like outside of your own experience, like, well, this is how it is, and this is how I am, and this is how it should be done, and this is how it's worked for me. So anything outside of that is wrong or different. And again, just giving people the benefit of the doubt about whatever it is. Like, obviously not, and then, you know, the people on your podcast, they don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore. But anyone who's not murdering people, like, live and let live. It's all good. I also think, I guess the conversation about, well, like, you did this to yourself. Like, you put yourself on this platform. You put your life out there for this judgment. You opened, you know, the doors of social media for this feedback. So don't complain when you get it, which I think is also kind of messed up.
Yeah. And what I'm asking for is for the world to be a better place. And it's not going to be. So again, I'm talking about like a hypothetical, like La La Land. I'm just saying, I think the people that also do that are unhappy. And so I think it'd be a happier world all around if we could do that. I'm not ridiculous. I know that we're not going to live that, which is why, like, I don't give a fuck what people say about me.
You don't know how many times I said IDGAF in the recording right before you. I was like, well, and because, as I've stated, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
But I also think that's something that you get blessed with as you get older.
Yeah. And I'm actually really grateful that I didn't have this platform until I was older. I don't know that I could have handled it the same way if I came into this in my teens or early 20s. Like, we really took off right around the time I turned 30. And I think I had a really good sense of who I was. I had time to build all of these relationships in my life with, you know, my husband before this ever happened, with my friends. I still have the same group of friends. And so I think that has been really important. And I always say this thing, like, I care what people I respect think about me. And so at the end of the day, you know, the friends that I had all along, you know, if they still think I'm a good person, if they still love me, if my husband still loves me, my family.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
If you were to come to me and be like, Mina, you've been a real, see you next Tuesday, like, we need to have a conversation, I'd be like, oh, crap.
Right.
Like, I value your opinion. You know me.
You know who I am. You don't know the 30 minutes that I was talking about, you know, one case or whatever, or the 30-second social media thing I did that is a fraction of my life. You know me inside and out. You know my circle, all of it. Yeah, that's what matters. And like, and so I can't give energy to every bad comment for people who don't know me, my intentions.
Well, and I think one of the things that has been kind of a hot button for crime podcasts in general that Audio Chuck, Crime Junkie, like everything you make does a really incredible job of, is not sensationalizing this stuff. So while you are telling, like, the story is the vehicle to get something like bigger across. You're telling an interesting story so people will listen
and care.
But you focus so much more on the victims and so much more on the advocacy that your platform created. I mean, the amount of money you guys raise, the amount of cases that are solved, because there are all these crime junkies that are 1,000% obsessed with the podcast, and literally everything you make, you could be like, this podcast is going to be about my last 10 bowel movements, and people would love
Number
it.
one.
But they would probably
Number
learn a
two.
lot about their bowels. For me, I think you guys do it in an incredible way, and so much good comes from it that some people also don't understand.
I mean, again, we have 1-star reviews like out the wazoo, like, and that's where, again, in my life, I treat my work the same way. I know that the people that I work with every day understand what I'm doing, respect what I'm doing. They think I'm doing a good job. They don't have a problem with me. Any law enforcement I work with, all of the victims' families we worked with appreciate what we're doing. And so in my mind, like, then I'm doing it right. If the people I'm talking about in the podcast are happy with what I'm doing, that's how I'm doing it right. Everyone, someone else who listens who has no connection to this, appreciate your opinion, thank you, but again, I'm answering to the victim's family.
Yeah. So we had a question in the mailbox from Beth.
Hi, Mina and Ashley. This is Beth from Indy. I love you both so much. I'm so excited to listen to this episode. You guys are both hometown heroes, and I'm so proud of both of you. My question, other than can I be your third bestie, is can we talk about money? Like, how are you guys investing? How are you thinking about the future? How are you taking charge of investing and planning ahead for the future. I'm just, I'm really interested in investing, and you guys are both incredibly successful. So I'd love to hear how you are investing and how you're thinking about the future. Love you both.
Oh, thank you so much. That is a great question, Beth. Obviously, humans are fickle, and my show could be gone tomorrow and everyone could decide that they hate true crime, which won't happen tomorrow. So, like, what are the things that you've done to create like financial security where you're going to be able to do what you want with your family for the next 50 years?
Yeah, for me, it's been a lot of things, especially as like I've grown and things have changed. A big part of what I've always done is had no debt, because what I've told Eric is, again, because I wanted to keep reinvesting in the company, and he's like, well, what if then we've had nothing to fall back on? I'm like, yeah, but he always had his job. I was like, I know what I'm confident in is I've been good at every job that I've had, and I know if podcasting blows up, if Ashley Flower's brand blows up, I could go get a job in medical sales tomorrow. So I can always go back to that. I also don't live an extravagant lifestyle, so I can go right back to living on $60,000 a year and be perfectly happy. So there was that early on where it's like, okay, we don't know what's going to happen. Let's just make sure if it goes away that I don't owe anyone anything. Is Frank okay?
Sorry, Frank's being a bugaboo whining over here. I don't know if you guys can hear him. I think that makes really good sense. And I think probably similar. I mean, my financial insecurities are far more deep-seated because my parents spent all their money on their divorce, and money was a control mechanism. So even as soon as I could drive in high school, I got a job. So I had my own money. So it couldn't be like, oh, well, you can have money for this if you do this, if you get good grades, if you whatever. So from a very early age, I wanted financial independence. And I'm sure you and Eric had the conversation when Steve and I got engaged, we're getting married. I always am very clear, like, this has nothing to do with you. This is my own issue, and it's now going to affect you. I will always have my own checking account. I will always. And I think because I will always have my own, like, you should have yours. And then we have a shared credit card that, like, groceries go on and the kids' swim classes and things like that. But I think that very early on was important to me, and saving and investing because even, my dad, he's 76. He's still working. I don't know when he's going to be able to retire because he didn't have the ability, opportunity, desire, whatever it was, to be able to save as much as he wanted. So I started my business as well with no debt. Kind of not by choice. No one would loan me money.
Right. So same. I didn't even ask for a loan because I'm like, hi, I'm in software sales, but I'm thinking about starting this media empire out of Indianapolis. I don't think anyone would write me a check.
It's going to be great. Can I have like 500,000? A few years in, I did asked and answered no several times. I actually our company got an equity line to be able to like fund the bill for some of the renovations like 2 years ago.
God.
But still, I mean, I have my own savings account, my own checking account. We have rental properties that are long-term investment, but I think just being very realistic about balancing it. And for everything in life, my kind of it's hope for the best, plan for the worst. So
that's,
Steve,
girl, I've been saying that forever.
Yes.
I was like,
no matter what it is, in your marriage, hope for the best, plan for the worst, in your career change.
I used to always say, I say it a little differently. I would always say I'd rather be pleasantly surprised than horribly disappointed.
Yes.
So
that has a nicer ring to it.
So yeah. So now, now that there's actually money coming in, it is for me about putting some of that away for my family, but also for my work family. Like, that's how I think of everyone here. And in my mind, I take it really seriously that these people left like corporate jobs and took a chance on me. And, now this is an established company, but part of what if podcasting blew up tomorrow, I have made sure that I've got enough to like float everyone for 6 months, that I'm not just going to tell someone you're done tomorrow. Like, I give them some runway.
That's incredible. I mean, and that's one of the big fears I have because my company doesn't really make a lot of money. We actually probably lost money last year, but thinking about the responsibility that we both have, that we employ other people.
There are families that rely on me. It's one of the things that like actually stresses me out the most
100%.
is that like everything I'm doing, with the business. It's not just like, oh, hope this works out. Like it has to work out because I have husbands and wives and we have such a young team. They're having kids. And I'm like, God, this has to work. This has to work.
I mean, there's definitely days, they've probably been 100 days in the last 8 years of the show where I'm like, I'm done. This is too hard. This is too stressful. Like I don't need to be doing this to myself, making myself crazy. And then the immediate next thought in my brain is, okay, this doesn't just affect me. Affects all my employees. It affects the entire production team who, yes, they could probably go get other jobs. It affects income for the state of Indiana. Like it's
I know.
It's a lot bigger than just like, okay, Steve's quitting his job and they'll replace him. He'll be hard to replace because he's really good at it, but he's in sales and it's stupid. That's what it is. It's stressful.
It's so stressful. I have a lot of tummy aches.
I want to ask you this. This is kind of changing the topic, but it was something we talked about early on in our courtship of friendship because the last name situation. I mean, obviously your name is just epic and well known. I had the show in a little bit of, name recognition before Steve and I got married. And it was very important to Steve that I took his last name. I do GAF at all, other than the fact that it's a pain in the butt to change your name.
Really.
Like the things you have to go through. And I did. I went through the process and I actually dropped my middle name and made my middle name Starsiak.
Yeah.
So now I'm Mina Starsiak Hawk. But I know it was a conversation for you guys too. So I want you to talk about that.
Yeah, a painful conversation.
Oh no, our husbands, you guys, have lamented many a days over how obnoxious Ashley and I are about how famous we are and all the things that go along with it.
Well, so that was my plan. And to Eric's defense, like was a frustration early on because the plan was for me to change my name. And everything that we talked about, it was like, yeah, I'll make Flowers my middle name, take your last name. And then as I got closer and closer, then I did start doing the business stuff. But there was something inside of me that like hurt. Like when I thought about not being
like that, you have to give that
not
up.
being Ashley Flowers. Yeah. And I couldn't understand why. And it's so funny. I remember having this conversation with my dad, who of everyone in my family is still like the most traditional. And I was like, I don't understand why. And he's like, well, like you're showing that you're like proud of his family and this. And I was like, but I'm proud of my family too. And like we had this whole argument. It ended with my dad being like, I don't know. I guess it's just the way things are done. And I'm like,
that's not a good enough reason.
Yeah. The minute you say that to me, I'm like, it's over.
Yeah.
So I was having like some struggles with it. I had just set up all the business stuff when we got married. And so it just like was one of those things like I wasn't doing. And then he was like, so are you ever? And it was right around this time that like, it was like a year into our marriage, my parents got divorced after like 31 years of marriage. And so that brought up a whole new set of feelings for me of like, I felt like I was already losing something of my family. I lose this too. And I was really struggling because I'm like, why does that matter? Like you fell in love with Ashley Flowers. Why can't I still be Ashley Flowers? And then, so then I was like, well, maybe when we have kids down the line, like we'll all have the same name. So that kind of like put it off. And then Joe came and it was like a whole new set of hurt he and I had to go through. Obviously Joe has his last name. Like it was really sweet. I wanted Joe to have a different middle name. He actually wanted her middle name to be Flowers. So I think she has something from both of us, and then at this point, I have so many LLCs and companies, and now I still love my name for me, but I can't imagine the nightmare of having to change everything. But it really was for me. It's like, this is who I am. And if you wanted me for who I am is Ashley Flowers. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't see why changing that. I'm not any less committed to you. I don't know.
I mean, it's such a bigger, like the meaning it carries for some people. I mean, I've talked about before, like with Steve, when we got married, for me, it's a piece of paper that I can burn at any second. I've seen my parents undo it a whole lot of times. But for Steve, because the way he was raised, like it is so much more. Yeah. It is this whole next level of commitment, and you are a ride or die. You will go down the rabbit hole. Like you are there. And not that one way, I would think my parents' way is probably not the right way. But I was going to say not that one is like more right or more wrong, but we just come from such different backgrounds, and you can't pretend that those things that you were raised with don't exist. So I can't just be like, oh yeah, my parents treated marriage like it was a joke, but I'm not going to do that. Like, it's deeply ingrained in me that marriage is not a permanent structure. So it does create a lot of those kind of internal battles and then external conversations with Steve. For you, I'm interested to know too, because I did your book launch with you and it was so fun. And your fans are diehard. My HGTV fans are too. And how does Eric feel, particularly because you're on a podcast, which isn't necessarily like a visual medium oftentimes? Steve's on the show, so he's got more recognition now. So people will recognize him when we're out together first and then recognize me sometimes. How does it work out for you guys? Does Eric get frustrated that you're out on a date dinner or whatever and you have people wanting part of you?
Oh, never. Because it doesn't happen a ton. And because I think many people don't know what I look like unless they follow me on social media, which is a small percentage of our listenership. And so honestly, and he has the biggest heart. He is the one who wants to go above and beyond for fans. And
he's so nice.
Oh, he is the nicest.
He's so nice
in the world. So it'll literally sometimes be him who, I remember one time he was like walking to the bathroom or something. This might have been when we were at Geraldine's. He was walking to the bathroom or something, and he's like, those people like at the bar, I heard them talking, like they recognize you. You should go up and say hi.
Yeah.
So and again, I think if it happened all the time and we were constantly
it'd be different,
being interrupted. Yeah. And truthfully, I think because you have to follow me to know what I look like, people know what Eric looks like, and the dude sticks out like a sore thumb.
He's giant. They're going to see him way before they
recognize
see you.
him. Yeah, way before they recognize me. And they're like, I saw Eric, and then I saw Chuck, and then I was like, that's got to be her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Does it ever create, anything beyond a conversation that your audio Chuck, like Eric is gainfully employed. He works for the company now, but he was in accounting, right?
He's a project manager for our Indianapolis Power and Light. He ran some of their green power initiatives.
Okay. And now he's on the audio Chuck team. He has been for a while.
He went and got his MBA in finance and then came to work for us.
What a smarty pants. Does it ever create any like conflict or anything where like audio Chuck is the breadwinner?
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about like working together and him feeling, because I tell him all the time, like, yeah, I know I'm the face of this. I'm like the talent on the show or whatever, but I couldn't have done this without him. Both like his financial support here. I don't know shit about numbers. So like his knowing about the accounting and making sure everything's done properly and that we're not like hemorrhaging money, like not only is that valuable, but also the support he's given me to do the long hours and the creative stuff, taking those 6 months that I know were painful for him to be at home with Joe so that I could go back to work. Like, I feel like it's a partnership, but I know sometimes for him, it has felt like this is my thing. And he has struggled sometimes feeling like he's just living in my world.
Yeah. I've noticed that I have to be better with Steve about making sure that like his corporate job that he's had since we got married for 11 years, he kept, not because he loves it and, is fulfilled by it, but it carried great insurance and regular income. And if anything happened with me or my business, we could live on that and that's fine. So that's a, kind of not necessarily, it's a sacrifice he made. And so recently when he chose to do something different, I really supported him. Like, you've done this for 10 years. You supported our family in a really nice structured way for this long. Like, now's your opportunity. And I have to be better about that because I'm not the most emotionally in touch or aware of other people's feelings human. Don't know if you've picked that up about me.
Well, but, Eric's love language is words of affirmation.
Yes.
Which is the freaking worst for me. Like, I am so bad for someone who talks for a living. I'm so bad at like, I will think all the wonderful things. He looks amazing today. He's such a good dad. But like getting it to come out of my mouth is such a chore. And so I've been trying to get better at preemptively thanking him, because one of the things he said, he's like, you always tell me what a great job I'm doing and how much I help you when I bring up the fact that I feel like I live in your world.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think it all the time. And so
you're not inside my brain. You can't figure that out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you felt like the fame from the show has affected any other areas of your life? I know you mentioned you have an amazing friend group. There's not a single one of them that I'm like, oh, they're annoying. I love them all. I love when we get to hang out with them all. And you had them before the show. And I think that is super beneficial, like, hashtag no new friends. But things get weird when you get some fame, right?
I mean,
obviously, we catfished you.
Yeah, you catfish. I was saying, I think you're my only like new friend. So much hasn't changed. Again, I think it's because I'm in this Indiana bubble. Like I've gotten like, DM'd or connected with like celebrities who are fans of the show. And like, there's a world where if I lived by them, maybe we're getting drinks or whatever. But like, I'm still down the street from the people I've been friends with for 10 plus years. So I'm still playing cards on Friday nights with those people. We're still doing Christmas parties together. So nothing has changed.
You actually posted something earlier this week with the friend group, and I had FOMO. I was like, oh, I miss them. I haven't seen them.
We need to all do something. Yeah, we did like a friends givemas, and we did like
giving
a white
thing.
Yeah, we did like a white elephant for Christmas, and it was so fun.
But it's even harder now once you have kids too to figure that out, because like my kids nap at different times than your kid, and I mean, Joe goes to sleep at like 6, which is incredible.
It's unreal.
But it's a whole nother element to an already incredibly busy life that you have to be super purposeful about. And I think particularly our better halves are good at that. And we have a group text that's called Ashley Fresh Flowers. I don't remember why.
It's called Fresh Snacks.
It's called Fresh Snacks. Oh, it's Fresh Snacks.
Yeah, yes. Because so we used to have an old chat that was just called Snacks.
Yes.
Because
and you got a new number.
Yeah, because my husband was constantly talking about like, well, what's our snack going to be? Like, what are we going to snack on? What are we going? And so we called the group chat Snacks, and then I got a new number, and I was like, you guys got to stop texting the other one. That goes to my assistant now, and so we're like Fresh Snacks.
So that is our group chat, and often it's just our husbands talking back and forth.
Because they have so much time.
And I'm sure they're going to be annoyed with us. Like, you guys make it sound like we don't work at all.
I'll get in there and it's like you have 25 missed text messages. And sometimes I'm like, Eric, just tell me what happened. I can't even.
I do that too. We have a couple of text groups like that. It's with you guys, with Luke Rhodes and his wife. He's our long snap for the Colts. And that group text is called Quadzilla because he has the best quads in the league. But again, the husbands will just go down the rabbit hole. And, the summary is always interesting. So that's great. But it's been super fun, and I thanked you in every email I send, but like ad nauseum for this podcast, like having you as a sounding board has been huge because my show's not going to last forever. Again, people are very fickle, and the network is changing all the time. So figuring out a platform that can be sustainable and a way where I can really, my goal was to be able to take what I do on Instagram and then just expand on it, because I have been able to, be comfortable talking about a lot of these things that other people aren't. So while nothing in our episode is particularly uncomfortable, other than, maybe some money stuff, that's my hope on this. And Ashley's been a huge help from the beginning. And so I'm super excited to have you on and chat. And I'm glad that we were able to make some time outside.
Me too.
That is, it's still work, so I guess it counts, but
this is fun work. I can't believe this is my job.
I know.
This is wild.
I want to learn so much. There's so many things that I want to talk about on the podcast. So that's really what I'm hoping, is to get all these really cool, interesting people on to talk about weird, interesting things and,
it's going to be so fun.
Learn stuff. It's going to be fun. So thank you for being part of it and helping.
Thank you.
And thank you guys all for listening. I really appreciate it. Do not forget, if you guys want to drop a question, we've got the link in the show notes with the voice box. Leave your question. We will answer it. And do not forget to subscribe.